So today I'm going to put together the basic assembly of this craft from iCraft called the Shadowbox Album. And there's a little closer look at this kind of thing. It's kind of cute. It's got sort of a shadow box for the cover, and there's one on the back, and then it has pages on the inside. And the back shows you what it might look like when you get it together. It only has 11 pieces, and 8 of those are inside pages, which are fairly straightforward. Again, the diagram on the back, although it has all of these markings as the inches, not all that helpful. But there are instructions, as it says in this one, inside. So let's take a look at those instructions and see how clear they are. Okay, again, one of the faults I have with the iCraft kits when they do come with instructions, one of my faults is that they don't often come with instructions, not every kit has them, is that they have done them using craft paper, which is what comes in the box. And in fact, in the box you get 2 colors, so you can make 2 of these albums, which is one of the pluses of the iCraft kits, is that you can usually make 2 to 3 separate projects out of one kit for one price, which is pretty good. They come with craft in this one, and they do come with black as well. Problem here is that they have photographed the craft, and you cannot see clearly because the photos themselves do not have much of a contrast in them, and you really can't see where score lines are or how to put things together. These are not that clear, and I have said that before about other iCraft kits. So of course I went to their website, or their YouTube channel, sorry, to see if they had a video on this one, and they do not. Thus, one of the reasons why I'm making this video. Okay, so let's get the parts laid out. So I have the craft set here, but I am going to show you the black set because I put the black one together. I like the fact that they come with more than one set in a kit, because one I look at as practice for figuring this out, since the instructions are not very clear, and especially when they don't have a YouTube tutorial for it. So there are supposed to be 8 of these, which are basically pages, and they have a score line, and I know that's probably difficult for you to see on this camera because again it's on craft, but there is a score line, which is the hinge at the top of those. Then they come with 3 other pieces. 2 of them are exactly the same. One is for the cover piece and one is for the back piece, and both these pieces are put together exactly the same way. And then there's another piece which they call the connector, which all these attach to. Now of course everything has score lines on it, which makes it much easier. So this is where this video is maybe going to be a little bit confusing, and I apologize for that, because I did, as I've mentioned, put together one of these in advance to see how it goes together, and I did struggle with it. I struggled with it not so much in the actual assembly, but in the way that things are attached. You can see that we have the first cover, and I marked it cover 1, and I do that with the pieces. These are going to get covered up anyways with decorative paper, so I'm not worried about writing on them, but it just keeps the parts clear. I do this with all the kits now when I put them together. Some have more pieces than others. This one, not so many pieces. So you could probably get away without having to put a label on it, but I did anyways. So this is cover 1, and you can see it's recessed, and that's your shadow box effect, which according to their package you can do some very decorative things with this. And just keep in mind that these tags and these other embellishments do not come with the kit. So when you open it up inside, you have your real estate. Now, don't look too closely at this. I had some problems when I attached this because it's in black. It's very difficult. You need really, really bright light in order to see where to line things up. But that's the cover, and then there's these pages, and it does lay flat, which is nice. So 8 pages, so basically 16 pages because they're double-sided. And then the back cover, now I have this upside down. It doesn't matter which way you put it. I wrote this on here before I assembled the box, and this one is the back page. and another little shadow recess in here, and it folds up like this. Now, one of the things I don't like is this piece. This is an overhanging piece, which at first I thought maybe I should have put it the other way, but I looked at their diagram. Again, I had to study the finer points of this, and if you look, and you won't be able to see this on camera, I'm pretty sure I could barely see it, but to figure out which way this went on, I saw that there was a line which matches up with this line. But if you looked at the step before it, they're showing you putting it face down. So the open part goes onto the inside of the booklet, which does make sense. However, what doesn't make sense is why this flap they've cut longer. So I have this little recess. I mean, it's not a big deal, but I think they should have made that flap just a little shorter. Now, what I might do when I put together the craft one is actually cut a little bit off of this so it's flush with the edges. So there you have it. So there's a lot of surface on here to decorate. So that's why I have not yet put together the craft version of this. The reason being is I want to pre-cut my background papers and put them on before I fold it all together. Now let's just talk a little bit about the folding, because this was the part that I found somewhat confusing. So first of all, they recommend in the instructions that you put together the cover pieces, and both of these are identical. Now I know it's very difficult on camera to see, but there are score lines, 4 of them, on each of these flaps and another 4 on these flaps, and they have these little points which don't make a lot of sense, okay? Because they don't have a score line. I don't know if you're supposed to fold them in. I didn't. But essentially the way this goes together, and this took a little bit of trial and error, is you take one of these sides, the longer side, and you fold it along the score lines. Now, one of the things I found with the score lines is that they are not scored all that deeply. So you might want to take a ruler and a bone folder and just line it up on the score line if you can see it. And you know what might help for this visually, at least it will for me, is if I grab a pencil. Hope that one's got a lead in it. And I'm just going to mark with my pencil the edge of each of these score lines. And actually, I'm going to do the same thing to this side. I am not going to assemble this completely because, as I said, I want to put in my decorative papers before I fold this up. But I want to illustrate how this goes together, because this was the part that was probably the most tricky. It's not that hard. Like I said, score lines are difficult to see, so I've put those pencil marks on there so I can line up my straight edge with each one, and I'm just going to give them a little extra scoring just to make it a little deeper, because I find that they didn't fold all that well. When you're putting kits like this together, one of the essential tools, or what I feel is an essential tool, is a bone folder, a good bone folder. This is a Teflon bone folder, which I use a Teflon one because on some of your darker papers like black, when you go to score, you might end up making, or even to varnish things, you might make the paper go a little bit shiny, and this is supposed to avoid that problem. Okay, so I've scored them a little bit better. Let's move that over to the side, and now I should be able to fold these along the score lines with a little bit more ease. And I'm going to use the bone folder, and I do suggest you take your time and crease each of these folds very well. Get a very crisp crease in it. It will make your life easier if you take the time now to do that. Okay, and I'm just going to go to this end piece right now and do the same thing. Again, making sure I give each fold line a good varnishing. Now, see, this one went a little crooked on me. And that can happen. It's only slight. You can adjust it. But do watch for that, because it will give you grief if these are not perfectly straight. Okay, now, in the instructions, let me show you this. This is something I find with this kit that's a bit of a problem. They show, I'm just going to try and get the lighting a little bit more. Okay, so they show that you fold these over. Take cover 1 and fold it according to the creasing. Again, broken English. Lock the edges as shown. Lock the edges. Well, they really don't lock, and it doesn't suggest here that about putting any kind of adhesive, any glue, any two-sided tape anywhere. So what I found was the easiest. I tried glue, but here's what's happening. You're bringing this one over here so that it kind of sits up like this, and you're bringing this one here, and you're folding that one back under, so you've got this like rectangle. I'll see if I can show you on the camera. It's difficult to hold it up, but you see you've got that on the inside. And this piece, fold it the same way, but you have to line up these corners. Well, the corners don't stay together very well. So what I found is on this outside fold, okay, so if you've got your lines all folded up and scored, lay it out flat, and on the outside, so flip it over, and on this outside score line here, this very outside edge, put your two-sided tape down here or your glue. I found two-sided tape worked a little better than the glue. Mind you, the glue does give you a bit of wiggle room, so if you don't mind standing here and holding it for a few minutes until the glue sets, then that's fine, use glue. But I just put a strip of tape right along this edge, double-sided, and I used a 1/2 inch. Throughout this project I used 2 sizes of double-sided tape. I used 1/2 inch and I used 1/4 inch. And it's pretty obvious which you will use where when you get this together. So let's put that, just to say I've got that glued down, and then so you see the tape will go underneath that flap. That's right here. And this is why you have to make sure your score lines are straight. Otherwise, this is not going to fold very well underneath. The same with this end piece. And then it says to lock them in. Well, I'm not sure what the lock them in is. Now, maybe that little V part, no, that little V part gets closed in under there. But there you go. You have sort of a mitered corner. But it will have a gap up here. So the way I solved that gap, and let me get the black one to show you. Here's what we're putting together, the front cover, and you can see the mitered corners. What I did was I took a little piece, and it's coming off, doesn't stick well. I put a little piece of, I don't know if you can see that, tape just over the corner to secure it, to hold it in. Now, I'm not worried about this, how well that shows up, because I'm going to be covering this. I don't know with what yet, but I'm going to be covering that. So it just gives the corner a little bit more strength. I don't depend upon this trying to hold everything together, because I don't think it does. And there's no real place in here where you can glue it. Well, you might be able to put a little glue under that edge and hold it there. That might work. But you still have this gap up here. So it doesn't go together perfectly. You've got to do a little bit of fudging around with it. Now, when it comes to the pages, you will do the same thing to the back cover as well. Set those aside. You have this connector piece, is what it's called. And what I suggest is that you don't fold this at first. Leave it flat, okay? And then each one of these pages has a little score line right along the edge here. I don't know if you can see it. Again, I don't suggest that you fold this yet. Use your score line as a placement for your double-sided tape or your glue. And you just put your tape right along the edge or your glue with that. And as I said, I want to cut my decorative papers and put them on first before I do this. But just to show you, the first score line, it doesn't matter which way this goes as long as it's long ways. You have these two flaps. And just simply, and I'm not taking this off, but I will fold this over, flip it over, and with the top score line, simply line that up. Now I haven't got it actually glued along that edge of that score line. Don't go over it because this you want to be able to fold. Then carefully fold your page back, and of course I don't have it glued here right now, but let's pretend it was glued. And then that's in the right spot. Then your next page, put your tape on it, and then just butt up that edge with the edge of the first page you put down. And again, then fold it over, and keep doing that with all 8 pages. And what will happen is when you get that all together, you will have this effect. Simple as that. And there is enough space for all 8 pages to go neatly in this. Now, you'll notice on this one I got a little crooked here. So this is where I had to fudge it. But this is because I tried several different ways of lining those pages up. And the method I just showed you with the craft is the one that I found worked the best. I didn't do that with all of these, and so some of these are a little crooked, and you don't want them to be crooked. You want to try to keep them in alignment as best as you can. If they go off a little bit, you can sort of refold and score very carefully to get it squared up. But when you're done, let me move a few things out of the way. This will be what you'll have at the end. So then it comes to decorating it. Now my plan is to do what I often do, is I'm going to take the measurements for each of these pieces and cut them out on my Cricut machine and then place them. So in the next segment of this video, I'll be showing you how I put in the background papers and how I assemble the whole thing with the background papers on it. So you will see me actually assemble this part. Okay, so you just have to be patient for that. So I hope that's as clear as mud. I think it's a little bit more clear than their instructions and their lack of a YouTube video for this. So stay tuned for the next segment. That's what will come to next. Okay, so now I'm going to assemble the basic Shadowbox album, and I want to show you some work I did before I started the video. First of all, because of the nature of this particular album, I felt that I should really make an effort to put all the background papers onto each of the pieces before I actually assembled the box. I thought it would make it a little bit easier. So what I did was I took the dimensions that were on the back of the envelope that all of the kit came in and used those as a guide for setting up my Cricut to cut my background papers. And my background papers are actually from the same company, iCraft. They also have papers, and actually I'm very impressed by these papers. They're very pretty. You can see out here on the cover what they look like. They are only single-sided, but they are fairly thick, which is nice. However, this pad does say this is 24 pattern paper at 210 GSM cardstock, acid and lignin free. It's a 12 by 12 paper pack. It is not a 12 by 12 paper pack. I measured the pages and I've taken them off now, but there was a strip, about a 1-inch strip that was on the edge of this. It had perforation so you could easily remove it, and that's what held it into this holder. But when you take that strip off, which is just a plain piece of paper, I'll show you. I think I've got one here that I pulled off. Here's what they look like. It's just a plain piece that sat on the edge. And when you take that off, this is no longer 12 by 12, but it's 11 1/4 by 11 1/4 or something like that. Now, actually, the company did know about this. I found out because I mentioned this to the supplier that I buy from, and she said the company realized this. It was a manufacturing misprint, and that their future pads would all be true 12 by 12 papers. But that's just an aside. But generally speaking, I do like this paper, even if it's not double-sided, because of the weight of it. And the colors are really nice in it too. So I decided to use that as my background panels. And so I set up my Cricut to cut all of these, and I cut them all about 1/4 inch longer, 1/4 inch less in length and width than the actual background pieces or the foundation pieces, so I'd have a nice little border. I went around all the borders of all the papers with just some Distress Oxide Walnut Stain ink, just to grunge it up a little bit. And I also did it on the parts that will become the Shadowbox part of the album, which are our covers. And I did it on everything. So that's all done and out of the way. I thought that that would be easier to do before I assemble it. Now, when it came to the assembly, I had to figure out where my double-sided tape was going to go. And what I was going to use, especially for these bigger panels, was I using double-sided tape, or was I going to use wet glue, or some form in between? So I experimented a little bit with this. And on some of these pieces, I used the double-sided tape, and I just used 1/2 inch double-sided tape. But I found that that was taking me a while to do. And so then I decided to use wet glue. And the first wet glue I tried was my go-to Gorilla Glue, the super glue, which dries clear. But you don't get a lot in one of these bottles. A lot of surface to cover here, and to be honest, this works better if you're doing it by drops as opposed to lines of glue, and I wanted lines of glue around this to really keep it secure. So then I decided to try another glue that I have, the Tombow Mono Aqua Liquid Glue, which I really like. But again, that was taking some time, and I thought, well, what the heck? Let's get out my Tombow tape, adhesive tape, two-sided, and use that. And that works really well. Now, a word of caution about using this kind of adhesive on some things. Craft stock, for some reason, I find, does not allow for double-sided tapes to adhere as well. It depends on the brand, I guess, or the manufacturer, but for some reason they have a different texture, which doesn't always lend itself to this. However, for this project, it did work very well. So that's what I used to put down my covers on all these pages. And of course, these are double-sided, so I had to cut 16 covers to cover the 8 pages. Then what I did was I decided, well, when you're putting this together, your edges are going to be raw, and you'll probably want to cover it up with something, and washi tape was the first thing that came to mind to me because it was the exact size that I needed to cover on all of the sides. So that's what I did. But I thought it might be a little awkward once these are folded up to add the washi tape on the sides and on the top. So as I'll show you on this piece, because I haven't assembled this one yet, I flipped it over. This is the back side. So it's the side that would be flat, this side, for example. And I put my adhesive already on it. I figured out where the adhesive would go when these are folded up to create the shadow box. And I figured out where my washi tape should go. And I picked two colors of masking, not masking, but of washi tape that I had. And I just, on the inside part, I did one. On the next part to it, I did a different color. And so you can see when they get folded up, you have the ones that go around the edge on the front, and then you get the ones that go around on the outside. And I thought that would just be easier. Now, the thing about washi tape is, though, it has a tendency, some washi tapes are stickier than others, and so sometimes they have a tendency to peel up. And given what I've already said about craft stock and craft cardstock and working with it, excuse me, I laid down a line of this particular adhesive, the Tombow Mono, and it was just the right size, and then put my washi tape on top of it and gave it a good varnish. That just gives me, even though the washi tape was sticky, it just gives me an extra secure adhesion to this. So I have all my pieces decorated. Now, putting it together should be fairly easy because I've already got all of these pieces on. I don't have to worry about working them around corners or things like that. So, showing you this piece. This is the second piece. One's the front, one's the back. And I'm just going to show you how I put it together. And one other little tip about these corners. So, I already did the scoring, or the score lines were already there. I already did the folding of them, so they're ready to go. And I gave them a good crease with my bone folder. And so now I'm just going to take off the tape on this one. And I'm just going to carefully fold it so that it creates a frame. Now you do have to play with this a little bit, but there is a little bit of wiggle room with this particular double-sided tape. And I'm just going in as far as I can with my bone folder to press that down. And actually, if I used a paintbrush handle, that might work better. Yes, that works better to getting in that space. And I'm just pushing it down on the bottom so it gets good adhesion. So there's one side done. Now I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to do the same thing with the other side. And guess what I did? I put my tape, or did I put my tape on the wrong way? And I did. I put my adhesive, when I did this, on the wrong flap. It should have gone on the one on the most outside. But one thing about this kind of tape, and in using it with combination with craft stock, it comes off very well. So I'm going to just take my tape again, and I'm going to put a new strip down where it should go. And these things happen. Actually, to keep myself straight on which fold lines, which score sections my washi tape should have gone on, I put a little X with a pencil on each one, just to keep me straight, because it's very easy to get confused when you're doing something like this. Okay, this should work this time. There we go. Let's give it a good varnish at either end. Okay, so now we've got the two edges. Now we have the end pieces. So we're going to do the same thing. Now these are a little bit trickier because you have to kind of get them lined up with the corner so the corner is mitered. And they kind of fit in to the corner, but you do have to play with it a little bit. Now, the one problem I have here is, of course, they don't want to butt right up tight. So the way I got around that was I took the washi tape that I used on the side, this key motif. I took some more of it. If I find the end of the washi tape. And I just went back around. Now, I don't really worry about matching this. And of course, if you used a washi tape that does not have a definite pattern to it, you wouldn't have to worry about matching it at all. But I don't think anybody's going to notice it. So you see, I'm just wrapping it around. Give it a good varnish. And I take my scissors. And just cut it off and varnish that. And now that's reinforcing that corner. And although I didn't put any adhesive underneath, it should hold without too much of a problem. I'm hoping anyways. So I'm going to do the same thing on this corner. So in a sense, it's like reinforcing the corner. And varnish that. Okay, that side's done. So now I'm just going to do the same thing with the other end piece. Now there is some fudging with this. Okay, get that in. Okay, and then we're just going to add our washi tape to reinforce and hold in the corner. One thing nice about washi tape, though, is because it's also repositionable. Of course, that's why it doesn't always stick as well as you would like it to. It seems to be doing the job here. Get this corner in a little bit. Got a little piece hanging out. Just going to cut that off. That was this little corner. There we go. Okay. Sorry if I'm going out of shot there. Okay, so there we have our top and our bottom covers. Now you may notice here that there's a little bit of the foundation pieces showing through and the corners here. Maybe if I've just thought of this now, maybe if I had put these ones together first and then these ones together, that would have covered that up and there wouldn't be that problem. But I'm not looking at it as a problem. I'm just looking at the fact that I'll probably end up covering some of that up with my embellishments when I get to that stage of the whole thing. Okay, so I've got those two pieces done. Now, we need the connection piece. That's what they call it. Let's make some room here. And I did something with this before. Now, of course, I stuck down my papers, my background papers, and this is what the pages are all going to be hooked to. But because this is on craft, it's very difficult to see the score line. So even though I scored it, I did mark it with a pencil because I'm going to use that as a guideline for lining up these pieces. Now, I have already put my tape on one side of a hinge on each one of these pages, but I'm not going to fold it yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to line it up and then fold it. So I think that'll make things easier. So I'm taking off the backing on the two-sided tape, and I'm just putting the edge of that hinge piece on the page piece right up with the connector piece. I'm just lining it up and I'm trying to keep this straight. And it's important this first one is kept as straight as possible because basically you're going to use it to line up all your other pieces. Now you could use glue for this. I wouldn't recommend using the Tombow because I don't think that will be strong enough. But I'm using double-sided tape. And now all I need to do is carefully fold that back along the score line, give it a good score, and I'll move these out of our way. And now I can do the next piece. So I'll take off the tape, flip this over, and butt this up against the edge of the first page I put in here. Again, keeping it as straight as I possibly can. But if I've got that first one in straight, when I butt it up, it shouldn't be any problem keeping it straight. And again, just going to fold that on the score line. Make sure it stays straight before you do an actual varnishing because sometimes it goes off a little bit. And there we have that. Let's do one more. And then I think you get the idea, so I'll do the other 5 off camera. And then come back and show you how to put the covers on. Okay, so I'm going to put the rest of these on, and I'll be back in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. Okay, so now I've got all my pages adhered onto this back hinge, as you can see. One little thing I found was this was not the first page I started with. This was the first page, and as I lined each one up with the edge, I'm not sure what I did wrong, but I ran out of space when I got here, and I had one left over, but no big deal. I just put it on top of the one that's here. So the only difference is, and no one would ever notice, is I don't have that gutter here, but that's okay. I could have left it out too if I wanted to, but it does have 8 pages with it, so I want to use them. You may have to do a little finagling to get things to line up properly. So now we come to putting the covers on. So let's put on the front cover first. So it's going to go with the shadow box facing up, and it's going to go onto this flap. Now I could have done this beforehand, but I didn't because I forgot. Put my tape on these flaps before I put in the pages. But actually, that's not a big problem. As you can see, it's fairly easy to do that after the fact. So I've got the 2 on here, and while I'm at it, I might as well put the 2 that need to go on this part. Oh, now this one of these parts is I'm going to cut these down. Remember, this part was hanging over too far when you put this on the inside. So I'm just going to eyeball how much I need, and it looks like it's about 1/4 of an inch. Well, let's take a ruler, but I think it's probably 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch. It's a 1/2 inch. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to open this up. Let's see. This is the one I want to take it from. So I'm just going to take my pencil, and I'm just going to measure from the scored edge 1/2 inch. Draw a line between those 2 points. And I'm just going to take my scissors, and I'm going to cut that right off right there. Now that should avoid having that little overhang piece on the inside. And I'm just going to put my tape on this. Varnish it. Okay, so now let's put our front page on first. Now you do want to make sure if you have any directional papers that you have them the way you want. These ones really doesn't matter, so I don't have to be that concerned about that. So take off the backing. And I think it might be easier to do it this way. Lay it down so it's flat, and then line this up carefully. You don't want to go over the crease, but you want to get it as close to the score line as you can. And that looks pretty good. Little tape there on the edges, a little sticky, but that'll come off. Okay, now let's do the back. So I want this to face the same way on the back. I could have done it that way. Let's do it in that way. But they did show it doing it this way. I mean, it's up to you, really. I'm going to flip that this way. I'm going to flip this one this way because it feels a little awkward doing it the other way, but I want to get them in the same perspective, they both have these little curly cues here, so I want them to be in the same way. Not that it would matter if they were a little different, because nobody sees the front and the back at the same time. And do the same thing, line it up. Oh, shoot. Mistake, mistake. Oh no. Got a problem, Houston. Okay. Do I have a problem, Houston? Yes, I do. I should have put that. Okay. Tape came off. It's still sticky enough. Okay. I need to do it face down. So face down this way, right? Now I'm getting mixed up. Yeah, that's the way I want it. Okay. When you're using something that you want in a certain direction, you got to really be careful. Okay, do this right this time. Now, of course, this flap has covered up some of my tape, and I'm just making sure. Okay, one thing I want to fix under here is I want to put some washi tape to match this right along this edge. Just hoping that's going to adhere properly. Okay, washi. Nope, wrong one. This is the tape because I want it to match this edge. And before I forget, add some of my double-sided sticky there to hold down my washi, and then put this down. Now, I didn't do a very good job of finishing this corner off that's here. I could have done that better. And on another one, I probably would. And I've got some overhang of sticky here. Oops. Oh, guess what I did? So, best laid plans of mice and men. My little reinforcement here, because I was pulling it apart, has come undone. It's ripped actually. So I'm just going to put another piece on top of that. Now you might want to use a decorative tape or something that's a little bit stronger than washi tape for this, because as you can see, that ripped, and I'm just wondering how well that's going to hold together when the album's finished. But I am doing this as a prototype to learn how to do it. So there we go. We have it all assembled. So let's just open it up. And the one beauty of this is it will lay flat. Now I have this right here. I need something on that. I have these little spaces in here. I could find some washi tape, I suppose. That's a little bit thinner. I don't know if I'll bother. I might. I'll see when I do the final embellishment. And there we go. I didn't get that very straight, that washi tape, and I don't think I can peel it up. I can't. So I'm just going to have to live with that. Actually, we can disguise it. This is all part of the fudging. If I just use a little bit of this ink, grunge that up a little bit. Actually, that's probably a good idea on these corners too. And just go around on the inside of these. That kind of, it doesn't hide it, but it's not so obvious. And I'm just going to do the same thing on these corners on the outside here, so they're not so stark. Oops, I did it again. Okay, washi tape may not be the way to go. So let's fix that. I'm sure you can come up with a solution for this. I'm sure if I thought about it, I could come up with a solution for this too that would work better, but I'm not worried about it. I still have the black one to do, or I can do at some point in time. Okay, that's a little better. All right, so there you have it. That's all the background papers all on it. It's all nice and ready to go. So now what I have to do is embellish the shadow box part on the inside and on the back page. Figure out what I'm going to put in there, and it is a shadow box, so I want to make something dimensional. I'm going to do with this piece and possibly these gutters that are here, and I do want to create some cards and things that can be slipped in here in some pages, maybe leave some of the pages with a little extra card on it for a photo or something like that, or journaling. I don't know what I'm going to do with that yet, but I will be doing that in the next segment. So now we've come to the final stage of this Shadowbox album by iCraft, and that is the actual embellishing of it. So I have these shadow boxes in the front and in the back, which I'm thinking I'm going to fill with a combination of various flowers that I have here and some butterflies. Now I made these butterflies some time ago using, I think these were done with alcohol inks on watercolor paper, or maybe not watercolor paper, I'm not even sure what kind of paper I used, but I put them through an embossing folder and cut them out. Die cut them. So I think they'll look pretty nice. I like the colors. The colors will go very nice with the colors I have on the background papers. And I may use this from iCraft as well. Every picture has a story to tell, which may go in here in the shadow box part. And I'm going to use, and you saw this, or I made these using the engraving tool on the Cricut Maker, and a little hard to see here on the camera, but in behind this, if I take a piece of paper, let me see here. I wonder if this will show up a little better. Well, not really, but there is engraving on here. It's subtle, but it's on here of some butterflies and whatnot, and I think the other one has some flowers on it. Oh, no, it's got a bee on it. So I may use those as part of the covers. And the inside, I'm going to try and create a lot of space. Well, there's quite a few pages in here, and this one I'm going to set up so that there's lots of room for journaling and pictures and things like that. And I think to do that, I'm going to grab this pack from Project Life. This is a kit that I've had for quite a long time. I went on a Project Life kick about a year or 2 years ago, and I bought all kinds of their kits and things like that, and a lot of them I've never opened. So this one, the colors in here, the pinks and the greens and that caught my eye because they kind of go with the pages of the paper that's in here. And I think I'm going to use these to create pockets to put some of the little cards that they have in this kit. I'll just pull this out so you can see what I'm talking about. If I can get it out. Here we go. Put that off to the side, but you can see it has these cards and embellishments and things. Lighting's a little bad on here. And it's got a little package of other fun embellishments. I may use some of those. And I'm just going to use these cards pretty much as they are, slip them in to little pockets that I'm going to make out of these larger cards on here. Now in some cases, I'm just going to place one of these right in the center and leave that as a blank area where people can, put pictures and things or journaling. And on others of these big cards, I'm just going to cut down like this one, put it near the bottom of the page or maybe off to the side for some variety. And then some of these can be just tucked in here. And these have writing on one side, but with a blank space, and are blank on the back. And some of them just have a little border, but they're all blank on the back, so it gives you a dual purpose, picture and journaling, whatever you want. And I may use some of the embellishments on each of these pages as well, because these are fairly flat, and I want to keep it fairly flat, although I do have room to expand in here. And we'll go from there. So I'm going to start off by doing the pages first, the bare bones of putting in pockets, putting in placemats for pictures, things like that. And then when I've got that done, I'll show you what I've done, and I'll come back and we'll start doing some finer embellishment of these inside pages.